This is CBC Here and Now.
After more than a decade, the town of Appleton is scrapping its seniors tax discount, and the mayor here says changing demographics are partly to blame.
I gave her a kiss on the cheek and held her hand and walked towards my house, and I knew right away that she had taken my heart back again.
Reunited after a lifetime apart, two lovebirds from the Burin Peninsula find each other after 65 years. Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes. We begin in Labrador. The chief of the Sheshatshiu First Nation wants out-of-province essential workers with Muskrat Falls to isolate in St. John's before traveling to Labrador. Nalcor planned to send 6 workers from outside the province to the site to work on the second turbine. Nalcor says the workers isolated in St. John's for 7 days and then received 2 negative COVID-19 tests. But Chief Eugene Hart says that's not good enough. He wants workers to isolate for a full 2 weeks before arriving in Labrador.
My members work at Muskrat Falls, and Goose Bay members and Northwest River members. So I don't want my members to go back and forth to Muskrat Falls and we have people isolating in camp. If people's coming in here from different areas, different provinces, like could be more than Quebec, like outside of Quebec, that's a problem because we don't know who's been hit and who's going to be hit because the virus thing is still high volume, and when you look at the news, there's lockdowns everywhere. So who's to say where these people have been?
Now, Nalcor says it's put in additional safety measures above and beyond the public health guidelines by requiring the isolation and COVID-19 tests. Under the public health rules, essential workers from outside the province do not need to isolate for 14 days. They can work on site with physical distancing and then isolate during non-working hours. Well, Nalcor says it's satisfied with its safety measures, but also wants to work with the Innu leaders so they also feel safe. In about 15 minutes, we'll have my full interview with Hart about his concerns. Well, meanwhile, there is an increase coming to the wage top-up given to essential workers just days before an expected election call. The province is raising the income threshold from $3,000 to $3,500. The money is coming from the federal provincial essential worker program. It provides a temporary wage top-up to essential employees who work during alert levels 4 and 5 of the pandemic. The taxable income is a one-time payment. Eligibility for this program has been extended until February 26th. Well, as we begin this new year, many people in the province are looking forward to a time when pandemic restrictions can start to lift. So when can we expect things to return to normal? Here in us, Peter Cowan spoke with John Haggie today as part of an in-depth interview with the health minister. It's a new series we're calling Beyond 2020. Peter joins us now. So Peter, what more can you tell us about this series?
Carolyn, January is usually a time where people want to look forward. What's the new year going to look like? And let's be honest, with the year that was, no one really wants to be looking back too hard into what 2020 was like. So with the series, we're going to talk about some of the people and the issues that are likely to dominate this year. And of course, nothing is expected to be bigger than COVID-19. We hope we might see the end of it, but even that doesn't seem to be for sure. So one of the questions I wanted to have for the health minister was, how quickly are things going to be back to normal? And he didn't seem optimistic that by this summer we might have any sort of large tourism industry back. It's looking more like the fall.
Our summer will be a bit more like the one we had later on last year, where there was staycation, there was interaction and opportunity to be out in the fresh air. The fall, I think, should be more normal, if you can still use that term, than the summer. So I'm looking for a gradual change over the course of the spring and through into the fall.
But just what will the end of this pandemic look like? And will getting vaccinated give you special privileges? For example, getting in even if there's a travel ban? There's more with my conversation with the health minister coming up later on the show. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, there are no new cases of COVID-19 in the province today. One person has recovered, so that makes 4 active cases. One person remains in hospital. Meantime, Canada has secured an additional 20 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine. That's expected to start arriving in April or May. The Prime Minister says that puts us on track to have 20 million Canadians vaccinated by June, with everyone who wants the vaccine inoculated by September.
We are very confident in being able to meet the September deadline we've laid out in terms of getting everyone who wants a vaccine vaccinated in Canada. But obviously, if we can do it even quicker than that, that would be great news. The quicker everyone gets vaccinated, the quicker we're going to be able to get back to a semblance of normality.
Well, Canada is now set to receive 80 million doses of the vaccine by the end of this year.
Temperatures certainly feeling a little bit more like where they should be sitting this time of year across the province, into the minus single digits for the island, minus double digits for parts of Labrador, and not a whole lot going on. Just some cloud cover in the area, and a ridge of high pressure just tracking south of us tonight. It's going to be fairly quiet for the next little bit, but then keeping an eye on an area of low pressure. I talked yesterday how the jet stream has dipped a little bit further south, so that's tracking most of the systems south of us. That's what's going to happen as we head through Friday afternoon, but we might see a little bit of precipitation for parts of eastern Newfoundland, but I will break all of that down for you and your full forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the town of Appleton is ending a tax program designed to help seniors. Now, seniors there were eligible for a 10% break on property tax, but they were told last month that's over. As Here and Now's Garrett Berry reports, the town says the population is just getting too old.
The program has been in place for more than a decade, but things are changing quickly.
And we look at the trends, and the trends showed that half the population of Appleton was going to be seniors in a few years. Then it was a liability for the town.
3 years ago, it cost the town $6,200. Last year, $10,000.
Where does it go, and how do you plan for it? If it was going to fluctuate up and down year after year, a few $1,000s both directions, you can plan for that. But when it's constantly increasing, it's kind of like the pension plan. Like it's underfunded, and you got to keep putting money into it. And we didn't want to be stuck with having a huge bill or a huge discount that we got to offset.
In a town like this, there's not many other sources of income, so they pulled the plug. The reaction?
I don't think it was given the due consideration that it deserves. Maybe a different program or a phased-in approach or something else other than just one fell swoop, here's the 10% increase.
A dedicated volunteer says if the town's going to be picking who will pay and who will receive, it would do well to remember who gives back.
They babysit, they shop, they vote, they run, in most cases, the polling stations. But more than that, they're the volunteers. I mean, most communities would be hard-pressed without the volunteers, who are, by and large, seniors. In Appleton, the first group that we call when we need anything, and I'm proud to say I'm among the volunteers in Appleton.
The mayor says he's interested in replacing this program with something income-based, where people who are poor or low income get a break on their taxes. He says that's fairer, could apply to anyone. But there's other ways to make these puzzle pieces fit. An influx of new families would be welcome too.
And we've noticed in the last 6 months that properties in Appleton that were for sale are now being sold. So they're being bought up. And we think that's encouraging.
Demographic pressures are being felt across the province, but here in rural Newfoundland, the writing is on the wall.
And it's kind of like pulling off a Band-Aid. You know, it's sometimes not going to equate to enough to help anybody, and sometimes it's just better to pull the Band-Aid right off at the beginning.
Garrett Berry, CBC News, Appleton.
The province has reached a tentative agreement with CUPE workers. The deal will extend the union's 7 collective agreements through to the end of March 2022. This after the province secured a contract extension with NAPE and the nurses union last year. The tentative offer still has to be ratified by CUPE's 3,700 members, but that didn't stop government from holding a media conference about it.
We've been talking to CUPE and our other outstanding public service unions throughout the summer, and I guess throughout the pandemic. The pandemic was certainly, I guess, an inhibitor here in us getting to where we wanted to be. But it was important that we do this, so we've been talking to them off and on, and we were able to come to an agreement. And it's important because if you think about who these CUPE members are, a lot of them are frontline workers, whether it's somebody working in a hospital or a school bus driver or a teacher assistant. So it's important we get where we got to today.
RCMP in Nova Scotia are investigating a complaint from a high-profile RNC officer. This after Joe Smythe accused former Justice Minister Andrew Parsons of political interference. Smythe was charged with obstruction of justice after he was accused of wrongly ticketing a driver in 2017. He was convicted but later acquitted. According to Smythe, Parsons wanted him convicted and had influence over the case. 2 years earlier, Smythe was a member of Premier Paul Davis's security detail when he shot and killed Don Dunphy in Mitchellsbrook. Smythe went to Dunphy's home to investigate tweets made about members of government. RCMP say they won't provide further comment while the investigation is underway. Now, the Premier's office is defending its decision to keep Andrew Parsons in cabinet during the investigation. It says the RNC and Director of Public Prosecutions both publicly said there was no interference on Parsons' part. Fury's office says the investigation doesn't impede Parsons' ability to serve, and there will be no changes to cabinet. Well, an update now on the PC nomination for Cape St. Francis. It seems Shanneyganock frontman Chris Andrews is no longer in the running. In a Facebook post, now deleted, the musician said he had doubts over the decision to run. Torbay Mayor Craig Scott and Pooch Cove Mayor Jody Wall are seeking the nomination. Voting starts Friday morning. And a man raised in St. John's is setting his sights on the Olympics. Mark Lynch finished 18th in his debut races at the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation World Cup in Winterberg, Germany last week. And as Heather Gillis reports, that puts him closer to his Olympic dream.
Next up, another debutant, 33-year-old Canadian Mark Lynch.
Hitting speeds of more than 127 kilometers per hour near the end of his run, headfirst down an icy skeleton track in Germany. Mark Lynch finished his first run in his World Cup debut in 57.42 seconds. His second run, just fractions of a second slower.
My first heat was really good, and then second heat not so much, but there was a lot of takeaways there.
Lynch finished his first two races in 18th place, a position he'd like to keep as competition continues at tracks across Europe.
Rattling all over the place, though, early in the run.
The 33-year-old engineer now lives in Calgary. He was born in Ottawa, lived in Fredericton, New Brunswick, but calls St. John's home after moving here at age 11. It's where he raced homemade street luge boards as a teenager and became involved in hockey, rugby, and other sports. It's where he went to university.
Now that is the way you make your debut.
But it was in Calgary in 2013 that he took his first run down the track. He's taken a year off work to train 6 days a week for up to 4 hours a day in the off-season and hopes to qualify for the next Winter Olympics in Beijing in 2022. He says there isn't a lot of support for amateur athletes in Canada, so he's fundraising $30,000 through GoFundMe to pay for training.
I've been saving up over the past few years to make a push, but it's expensive. We're not funded at all, so it's all self-funded.
But for now, he's focusing on remaining competitions at the Worlds.
I'd like to win, but got to be a bit realistic.
As for the Olympics, qualifications come next year.
We don't have the criteria yet, but I need to be ranked one of the top 2 Canadians to qualify.
Something that could be achievable since he finished first in Canadian selection races in November. Lynch is now in St. Moritz, Switzerland, where he'll race again on Friday. Then it's back to Germany for more races before the World Championships in February. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, sticking with sports, it's game on for the NHL. The highly anticipated but controversial season starts tomorrow.
Here's Virtanen down the right wing, picked up the puck, going to the goal. Virtanen to the backhand, they score.
This year will look different than normal. Teams will play 56 games instead of 82. Divisions have been realigned as well. There's now a Northern Division for the NHL's 7 Canadian teams. They'll only play each other during the regular season, which means no cross-border travel. Plus, there are other COVID-19 protocols in place. Players and team staff will be tested every day for at least the first 4 weeks of the season. Coaches must wear masks on the bench. Well, now to a story of long-lost love. Frederick Paul and Florence Harvey fell for each other when they were teenagers on the Burin Peninsula. For a while, they thought they might get married. But Frederick went away for a year and they were never able to reconnect. Both went on to marry other people and both were widowed when Frederick's brother ultimately played matchmaker. In a twist of fate, they both had family at the same long-term care facility. Florence finally called the day after Valentine's Day.
We started talking about our courtship years ago and all the things that we had done together, and before you know it, we were on the phone 3 and 4 hours at a time, 4 times a week. And then Florence said sometime in June, she said, I have a son in Georgetown, which is only 10 minutes away from you, and I'm going to come up to see him, and maybe you and I can see each other and see if we're compatible or like each other or whatever. On July the 5th, I had a birthday party here with my family, and Florence was supposed to call that night, you know, around 10 o'clock like we usually do. Finally, she did call, and I said to her, "Are you in Springdale, Newfoundland now?" Because she has a son there, and she said no. And I said, "Are you in Grand Falls at your own place?" And she said no. And I said, "Are you in Norris Arm?" And she said no. She has a son there as well. And I said, "You're not in Ontario, are you?" And she said, "Yes, I am. I'm 10 minutes away." And I'm starting to cry now. I'm sorry. Anyway, I said, "I want to come over and get you." And she said, "No, it's too late. It's 10:30, and we'll meet tomorrow." And I said, No, I want to come and get you now." A few minutes later, her son knocked on her bedroom door and said, "Mom, get your clothes on. We're going over to see Fred." I was in bed already, and I had to get up and get dressed. And I thought, now I have a box of seashells from Newfoundland out in the garage, and I'm going to go out and get those, and I'm going to put "Welcome Florence" on the driveway. But I couldn't find the seashells, so I ended up with chalk and big letters. I put "Welcome Florence" on the driveway. And I went around the car, and Florence was getting out of the back seat, and I gave her a kiss on the cheek and held her hand and walked towards my house, and I knew right away that she had taken my heart back again.
I knew, like he did, that there was still something there after all those years. And it was only about probably 3 days or 4 days after that, we were talking marriage.
We're 81 and we're 84, and we don't have all that much time, and we know what we want. And so we pushed ahead, and we were married on August the 8th.
The city of St. John's is changing some bylaws when it comes to garbage pickup.
This is a little thing that everybody who has one of these bins can do to make the city a little bit more accessible.
I'm Jeremy Eaton, and I'm going to walk you through what's going to be different coming up tomorrow on Here and Now.
Shaping up to be a pretty beautiful evening out there right now. Not too much in the way of weather over the next day or so, but we are watching towards the weekend. I'll have those details in your full forecast coming up.
We have an update tonight on a story that Here and Now brought you on Remembrance Day. A special pin commemorating a fallen soldier of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment has made its way across the Atlantic. Soon it will be on display for all to appreciate. CBC's Jen White has the details.
A special commemorative pin that made its way from the UK here to Newfoundland and Labrador is now going to make its final home at the Rooms.
Louis Revaliente bought the poppy 5 years ago. It commemorates Private Michael Jackman, who went missing at the Battle of the Somme in Beaumont Hamel in 1916. Revaliente reached out to CBC last fall, looking to reunite the pin with Private Jackman's family.
Each pin has been made from the artillery shells from the battlefields of France, and what they've done is they've melted them down and made them into these poppies.
Hello there, how are you?
CBC tracked down the soldier's nephew and namesake, Michael Jackman. Jackman decided the pin belongs in the Provincial Museum for all to see.
Thank you very much. Now it's my pleasure once again to present on behalf of myself and our Legion Portugal. I feel very proud, I feel honored on behalf of, you could say for the Jackman family. It's found a permanent resting place, and this is probably the best place for it.
Maureen Peters says she has the perfect place to display it.
Right at the end of the exhibition, we have a commemorative hallway. We have a family treasures case, and that's where we are putting items as they come up and get donated to us that are important to individual families and stuff that people held on to. So we thought this would be a perfect artifact to go into the family treasures case.
Peters says the pin should be on display within the next few days. Jackman says he can't wait to see his uncle's poppy here. Jen White, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, before we get to the weather, let's head to Cartwright. The town is now relying on backup generators to keep phone and internet service running after poles snapped during a freezing rainstorm. The mayor says the poles are located in a tricky spot, which will hamper repair efforts.
We were quite lucky that we never lost main power to the whole town. The only real damage that we had, and we were quite lucky, was there were 6 or 7 poles snapped off up on the hill where the double line towers are, and they cut the power to the microwave towers, and they're now on backup generators, which is good. We still have internet and phones, but if we were to lose those services, it wouldn't be good, especially for the internet. Nowadays, you use internet for just about everything, including banking, taxes, just about anything you can think of. If that generator should fail, then we don't have any phones or internet. Now, I was talking to someone. He said the generator that's up there is only small, and could be easily replaced if it should happen to break down. That's one good thing, I guess you can call it, but still there's still a chance that we could lose internet and long distance phone services.
Wow, just incredible photos. You showed us some of those photos last night, and I spoke with the mayor. He said he's never seen anything like that before.
It's a lot of
kind of ice
yeah, it's a lot
on
of
everything.
ice.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll get those repairs done soon. How's the weather looking in that neck of the woods?
Cold.
Cold?
Right now, it's pretty cold. That ice isn't going anywhere, at least for the next little bit, at least through the week. Let's take a look at those current temperatures across the board. Minus teens up through Labrador, Cartwright sitting at minus 13 right now, and then we've got temperatures in the minus single digits for most of the island, minus 2 in St. John's right now. A little bit of a wind chill, feeling more like minus 6, minus 10 it feels like in Gander. So if you're planning on heading out, you are going to want to bundle up a little bit tonight, and then along the coast, Makkovik and Cartwright, you're feeling closer to about minus 20 and minus 21 this evening. Taking a look at the satellite radar, not a whole lot happening, just lots of cloud cover across the board. And as we head through the night tonight, we are looking at the potential for some flurries. Again, moving in for southern portions of the island as well as the Appleton Avalon. Generally clear skies up through most of Labrador. However, we will see the potential for a few flurries in Lab West as we head towards the morning hours. And then same thing for southern areas of the island. Temperatures are going to stay cold up through Labrador as well, minus teens tonight, and then dipping into the minus double digits probably for areas in those low-lying spots for the island. And then otherwise, -3 to -8 with winds generally out of the southwest, about 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. So a little bit of a wind chill expected overnight. As we head through the day tomorrow, not a whole lot going on. Again, we're looking at a pretty similar forecast to today. However, we will see the potential for some flurries moving in as we head through the day for eastern areas. As you can see, the potential of flurries moving through along the west coast, same thing. And then a few centimeters possible for Lab West. Into the afternoon hours. Those flurries will move towards central and coastal areas overnight into the beginning of Thursday as well. Shouldn't accumulate too much as far as that snowfall goes, or at least the flurries go, but that risk is still there nonetheless. Temperatures hovering in and around the 0-degree mark, a little bit above for southern areas of the island, particularly the Burin Peninsula. And then we've got temperatures into the minus single digits for Lab City. They're not going to move much from where they were sitting today. Happy Valley, Goose Bay, -9, -12 up through Nain. And again, those winds will stay generally out of the southwest or variable a little bit, 10 to 15 kilometers per hour for the island. That ridge of high pressure is going to move off. We again talked about how the jet stream has moved south of us right now, and we're going to watch the weather as we head into Friday night, or Thursday night rather, into Friday. An area of low pressure moves south of us. There's some disagreement in this, but the risk is still there to see some showers and or snow overnight Thursday, beginning overnight Thursday, and then into the first half of Friday. It moves through fairly quickly. There's still lots of things to iron out, but that risk of either rain or snow is certainly there. That will move off. A ridge of high pressure will move in behind that, keeping things quiet to start the weekend off. We're going to see some increasing cloud gradually as the day goes on for Saturday, and then into Sunday we're going to watch the next area of low pressure move in. This one looks like it'll bring some warmer temperatures and then some rain through parts of the island, so we're going to watch that one as well. Here's a look at the forecast for Thursday. Temperatures in and around the 0-degree mark or just a little bit above, hence that starting off is potentially rain for eastern areas. And then we've got mild temperatures again into the minus single digits anyway for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, same thing for Cartwright. And then as we head into Friday, those temperatures are going to dip again, and that's because we'll start to see that ridge of high pressure move in. However, flurries will remain the story for Lab West. Sunshine for the southern portion of the island, but then again, that risk of either rain or some snow for pretty much the rest of the island. Taking a look at the forecast over the next 5 days as we head into Saturday and Sunday, things will eventually quiet down. 0 degrees +4 on Sunday. That's when we'll see that push of mild air to start off the week. Again, probably some rain as we head into Monday. And then similar story for both central and western Newfoundland. However, you'll see that precipitation start a little bit earlier in the west as that low pressure system advances. And then we've got eastern Labrador looking at temperatures flirting with the 0-degree mark as we see that warmer air, milder air move in for Sunday, and then pushing that envelope there for western Labrador, sitting around -4 on Saturday, and then Sunday some flurries and -2. Had to share this photo. One thing that I miss the most about the north are these northern lights. These were in Nain last night. Take a look at these gorgeous photos, or at least that gorgeous photo. Oh, I'll have to show that with you. I skipped ahead a little bit there, but thank you so much for sharing that. And if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Beautiful northern lights. Well, the Sheshatshiu First Nation chief has blocked a flight of Muskrat Falls workers from landing in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Nalcor says those workers isolated for 7 days and tested negative for COVID-19, but the chief wants a 2-week isolation for out-of-province workers. Chief Eugene Hart joins me now from Happy Valley, Goose Bay. So, Chief, can you explain that situation involving the flight of workers heading to Muskrat Falls? Why didn't you want them traveling to Labrador?
Well, first of all, thank you for your call. When they were doing isolation in St. John's. So they're trying to send them up after 7 days to Labrador. And I didn't really think that was acceptable on my end, and other leaderships and other consultants didn't think this was feasible for our community to bring in people from outside, especially like Quebec and Ontario has a big, huge lockdown.
The workers at Muskrat Falls, they're considered essential workers, so under the provincial rules, they're not required to isolate in St. John's before going to the work site in Labrador. They're allowed to go straight to work. So why not allow them to go to the work site at Muskrat Falls?
Well, for me as a leader for Sheshe First Nation, there's certain ways that you got to look at things. Presumptions like Muskrat Falls is almost like another community. So my members work at Muskrat Falls, and Goose Bay members and Northwest River members. So I don't want my members to go back and forth to Muskrat Falls, and we have people isolating in camp, and we don't know who's carrying this virus. It could be one of these people that's doing isolation. I really think personally, as a leadership, they should have just finished their 14 days in St. John's. So they're almost there now. So to come back to Labrador and finish off the other 4 days, I think it's totally unacceptable on my end, because we're in a small place and we're in isolation areas, and we don't want to take the chance. I don't want to put the chance on my people as well.
So do you think that Muskrat Falls workers should be considered essential? Do you think that the rules should be more strict for so-called essential workers who are going to Labrador?
Well, we don't mind the crowd is coming in from St. John's, because we go to St. John's, there's no isolation involved in Newfoundland and Labrador. But if you're coming in from another province, that's a totally different ballgame.
So what happens next with this? Are you in contact with Nalcor? Do you know when the next group of workers is supposed to travel to Muskrat Falls, and will you try to block those workers as well?
Well, I was in contact with Nalcor, and they are not sending in the charter to fly into Labrador, and I'm proud of that, because that's what I want. I don't want anybody here. If they're going to finish isolation, they should just finish the isolation where they started. Don't start something and finish it elsewhere. I think the easy solution here is to finish it where they started off, because you're still putting the risk on the residential people.
Well, Chief Eugene Hart, thank you so much for speaking with me about this.
Thank you.
2020 was the year of the pandemic, but what about 2021? How will the end of COVID-19 look in this province? My feature interview with the health minister coming up next. 2020 became the year of the pandemic, but when it started, COVID-19 was more of a novelty, something Newfoundlanders and Labradorians were watching from afar.
The overall risk for Canada and for Newfoundland and Labrador is low from a public health point of view.
By March, everything had changed. Businesses were closed, travel banned, empty streets. Newfoundland and Labrador has managed to keep the cases of COVID-19 low, but the restrictions still affect everyone. Everything is different, from shopping for groceries to going to school. But now there's a vaccine, delivered in record time. Will 2021 mark the end of COVID-19? Welcome to a series we're calling Beyond 2020, looking at the people and issues that are going to dominate the year ahead. And of course, nothing dominated the last year quite like COVID. So will 2021 be the year that we get rid of this awful disease? Well, let's ask the man who's been central to this province's efforts to fight COVID-19. John Haggie is the Health Minister. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation, Peter.
I want to pick up on a comment that you made last week at one of the briefings, that COVID-19 and the restrictions that come with it may be lingering into 2022. I think that has a lot of people kind of depressed, that we may not even be halfway through this pandemic. Do you realistically think a year from now we'll still be sitting down and chatting about the same issues and dealing with the same face masks and travel bans?
I hope not. I mean, the challenge that we have is that our vaccine rollout is determined by factors we can't control, which is basically the federal government purchasing on our behalf. We're optimistic that while we have 2 vaccines now, over the course of winter and spring, that may go to 3, 4, or even 5, which will make our life a lot easier. But until we get a sufficient number of vaccines in arms and people protected, we really just simply don't know about transmission and whether or not the vaccine will reduce or prevent that. So until we've got a level of immunity in the community, we need to continue with the masks and the distancing. I'm optimistic that we should be able to phase those out, but it could be by the time school starts again in the fall.
Yeah, the federal government has certainly said that every adult who wants to get a vaccine, September is the date that they really think is realistic. So, do you see a fall that's going to start to look a lot more normal?
Oh, I'm hoping in actual fact that our summer will be a bit more like the one we had later on last year, where there was staycation, there was interaction and opportunity to be out in the fresh air. And the fall, I think, should be more normal, if you can still use that term, than the summer. So I'm looking for a gradual change over the course of the spring and through into the fall.
When you talk about summer, there are a lot of businesses that rely on the tourism industry. They were decimated last year, and a lot of them are looking, will we be able to have more of an industry this summer? Do you think that we'll be at a point that we can start to ease some of those restrictions and invite more people back into our province by then?
Certainly from the point of view of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians moving around and the staycation concept, I think I'm optimistic that will be ready to start as soon as the weather improves. The challenge about bringing people in from outside is that we would love to. The difficulty is what's going on outside, because we've seen how we've done so well, but that hasn't translated into what's happened in other jurisdictions. And of course, most of our travelers over the summer from Canada would tend to come from places like Ontario, Alberta, or BC. So love to have you, but it depends on what the situation's like in your home province before we could make those decisions. And that would be Dr. Fitzgerald's call as much as anybody's.
But as more and more people get vaccinated, do you see a world under which we say, you know what, if you've got proof that you've been vaccinated for COVID-19, welcome to Newfoundland and Labrador, you can come and explore, and we know that the risk that you bring is going to be so much lower?
Well, we hope the risk is going to be so much lower. The data about transmission and whether or not an immune person from the vaccine is actually not capable of carrying the disease is not yet clear. We're waiting for the science. And if it proves to be the case that it deals with transmission as well, then yeah, fill your boots. You come with your vaccine certificate, and I could see a scenario where that would work, but it depends on the science.
People are pretty run down after almost a year of having to deal with many of these restrictions. For example, I've talked to people who, haven't seen their kids because they live elsewhere in the country in a year. If we end up having another whole year of this, at what point do these measures no longer become kind of emotionally sustainable for people?
That is certainly a challenge, and I think one of the things that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have done very well is to deal with that. They have certainly held the line, and you can tell. You've only got to look at the daily case counts per capita to see how well they have done. But you're right, it's a marathon with hurdles, and the longer it goes on, the harder it gets. I mean, I've not seen my grandchildren in BC and Ontario, just like everybody else. I'm still waiting for my refund from WestJet, but we won't go there.
So, as someone who is looking to be able to allow that travel again, is this the sort of thing that you're thinking, you know, are you booking a ticket for next fall? Are you hoping that maybe this summer? When are you kind of betting on this?
I don't make those decisions, actually, Peter. I think it's worth repeating that the Health Promotion and Public Health Act gives that power solely to the Chief Medical Officer of Health in terms of travel restrictions. They have served us well, and I, like everybody else, would look forward to a time when we can do that. And the scenario you painted earlier on of where there's a lack of transmission associated with immunity from the vaccine would in actual fact potentially allow that to happen. But given the other comments, that's going to be the fall of this year.
Well, there's still more to come with my conversation with John Haggie, the Minister of Health. That's coming up on Here and Now. Welcome back to Here and Now and the segment we're calling Beyond 2020, where we look at issues that are coming up this year. And joining me is John Hagee, the Minister of Health. I want to ask you about the legacy of COVID-19. There are plenty of things about this virus that we will be happy to get rid of. What are some of the things that you've learned over the last years, or things that we've developed, that you think we should keep with us even when COVID is done?
Well, I think several things. One is that we can do things differently and quite quickly. Given the stories about how slow the civil service is said to work, I have been absolutely awestruck by the speed with which some of the things that happened this year did. We went to virtual care very rapidly. We've moved to online bookings of appointments. We have really enhanced our online suite of mental health tools. We were leading in that area before, but I think now the department's won a prize internationally for its leadership in e-mental health tools. So that's one of the things that really struck me from the departmental point of view. I think from a provincial point of view, again, just simply impressed with the way people have stepped up to deal with problems and recognize that life has to be different until it can go back to what it used to be, or as near what it used to be as it can.
In previous years, we have, dozens of people die of the flu, and we don't change much. 2/3 of people don't even bother to get a flu shot out of this. Now that we know that we have the tools to be able to prevent respiratory illnesses like COVID, like the flu, do you think this will change how we approach, for example, things like mask wearing? Could this become a commonplace thing if we're dealing with a flu outbreak over the winter?
There is an opportunity for us to use these tools for other things in the future. You're quite right about flu. I mean, we had quite a good uptake with the H1N1 vaccination program some years ago, but very rapidly after that, we kind of went back into our old habits. And it's really quite strange because for children and for childhood vaccinations, Newfoundland and Labrador is one of the best, if not the best, province for numbers in the country. I mean, we're up at 94 to 98% for childhood vaccinations. But for adult vaccinations, we don't seem to bother.
What about some of the other measures beyond just a vaccine? Physical distancing, mask wearing, things that we know will actually protect people, not just from COVID, but from, the cold and flus and things like that?
I think there is an opportunity for us to try and promote some of those, but I think, quite frankly, once people regard COVID-19 as over, whenever that happens, there's going to be a rush to really shed it all and throw ourselves back in time, as it were, to 2019. And I think that's going to be difficult to manage, but we'll certainly give it a shot.
Now, the healthcare system has been so razor-focused on COVID-19. What are some of the things that have fallen by the wayside? What do you worry about that's getting overlooked as everyone spends their time, effort, and money on this one huge challenge that we have?
Well, my first mandate, as it were, was very much acutely and heavily focused on mental health and addictions, and we knew that was a challenge, and we spent 3 years working hard, and we've come to a much better place. It's a journey we're not at the end of yet. My idea with the second mandate was to turn that focus onto seniors care and community-based care, and really we'd just begun that work in 2019 and early 2020, and COVID kind of kicked that into the sidelines, because the same people who would have been doing policy and development on that have had most, if not all, of their time taken up with dealing with COVID, as everybody kind of pitched in to help out. So there are those elements that need to be reworked, and we've got a lot of work in the pipeline there that I'm really keen to get out there. I've been working with the federal government, having been, I think now, Canada's longest serving health minister, and certainly the province's longest serving health minister for over 50 years. I built some relationships with the federal government, both at the civil service level and at the ministerial level. And those were beginning to pay fruit. We were having some really good discussions about seniors care. There's always been concerns about acute care and primary care, and I think there is a huge opportunity now for us to do that in a far better and far more effective and far more patient-centered way, and those have gone by the wayside. And from an operational point of view, the regional health authorities have certainly been challenged to maintain services in the winter, other than related to COVID. Now they've caught up a lot, but again, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of making the operations of the healthcare system much more effective.
We all know how the pandemic began, and we have those moments where, you know, the emergency was declared and as things shut down. How do you see the end of this pandemic looking? I think it's going to go out like a lamb. It came in like a lion and it's going to go out like a lamb. It'll fade over time if my guesstimate is right, and that we'll gradually ease up on things, and the restrictions that are in place with the special measures orders will be rolled back. And at some point, Dr. Fitzgerald will say to me, "You don't need to sign that emergency declaration anymore," which I've been doing every 2 weeks since March the 18th. Well, we'll all hope that day comes sooner rather than later. John Hankey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for your interest, Peter. Good day.
Well, Donald Trump emerged from the White House to visit a section of the border wall in Texas.
Unlike those who came before me, I kept my promises. And today we celebrate an extraordinary milestone, the completion of the promised 450 miles of border wall.
The wall, part of his 2016 campaign, still remains largely under construction and includes many older sections. His trip to the U.S.-Mexico border is seen as mostly symbolic. He likely sees the wall as a legacy. Trump is taking no responsibility for inciting his supporters last Wednesday with baseless claims of election fraud. At least 5 people, including a Capitol police officer, were killed in the siege. Today, Democrats say they have enough support to go ahead with tomorrow's impeachment vote. Welcome back. Swash, you have a quick recap of the weather for tomorrow?
Yeah, it's going to be fairly nice. A little bit of peaks of sun through the day. Some chances, some flurries though, with temperatures hovering in and around the 0-degree mark. A little bit warmer for the northern, or rather the Burin Peninsula, and then temperatures in the minus single digits for Labrador. I wanted to quickly share the photo with you of the Northern Lights because I messed that up last time. Look at that, beautiful shot.
Beautiful. And you say this is Nain.
It is Nain.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, Todd shared those photos with us. Northern Lights dancing away. Thank you so much for that.
Well, that's it for us. Good night, everyone.
Good night.